We are back, everybody. We're a couple seconds late for this, but
Coming back.
no big deal. We got the backgrounds on and everything. We're kind of
True.
chilling. But yes, so the first week of games for Scrim Zone Season 5 is completed.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I will say neither of us got our predictions completely right. Mason will argue he got every victorious team correct, which is true, but he didn't get the game results correct, so neither of us are getting a skin
I was
this
one
week.
game off. I was one game off. Come on, man.
I was
Shake my head.
very intelligent about realizing that the Reef Shark series was going to be a 2-0. Unfortunately, I did not particularly correctly predict
Wait, was I
who was
one
going
game
to
off
win.
or two game off?
I think you were a
Hold on.
couple. Um,
Let me check.
I don't know. You'd have
I
to
got
go and
every
look.
winning team right though.
It's okay. Mason is still wearing the same shirt from last week. You can tell that he hasn't changed all week.
Yeah, I definitely
Clearly,
didn't go to work and change shirts. You're so right, man.
true. He's actually like stun locked by the fact that he didn't get all of his predictions correct.
Wait, I'm literally one off. I'm one off. That's so cringe. Come
It's
on,
okay.
man.
Clearly, next week we will do better at our predictions. Someone will get it right. Maybe
True.
not. Maybe it's better for our wallets if no one gets it right. But anyway,
On God.
I was hoping for some closer series. I was hoping for at least a 2-1 series. And we didn't get any. We saw a pretty decisive win that we actually just restreamed right now from the Nutbusters over Metabusters. I think Silico in the second game of that series was able to pull it back pretty closely. I think Rift Sharks versus Andromeda was a pretty simple story. Cam 1v9s everybody is going fucking crazy.
That was a pretty base performance from
Yeah,
Cam, I will say.
honestly, like I think after the Frostbite tournament, I said Aya was the player to look out for going into the season. Completely changed my mind here. I think Cam is definitely the player to look for. I honestly, this is on me. I thought Cam was simply performing really well because of blind pick, and he got a few matchups. I feel like I go, oh, he's performing well in Master Yi mid. This is just like a blind pick thing. I clearly don't get it. But he's kind of continued to perform super well. I think he is going to be the player to watch going into this season. I'd be surprised if he doesn't have at least a pretty good run at the MVP, but obviously it's only week one, only so much to say.
No. We gotta exaggerate as much as
Okay,
possible. I
Cam is the
think,
best player to ever be seen in Scrim Zone. Whoa, no
yeah.
one even gets
He's the
it.
number one jungler from here on out. What a go, baby. What can I
So
say?
true.
It's crazy. I do think his performance has increased a lot from last season. He did do a role swap into jungle. Uh okay, not to flex myself, but I did actually give him a little bit of jungle coaching here. I think he took a lot of it to heart. He's been studying a lot, giving him a lot of resources on like jungle pathing and stuff. So I do like that he's taken a lot of this to heart and is really utilizing the knowledge that he's been given. So props to him for learning a lot in off season. Has a lot of good jungle picks. Like I think his Echo has transitioned super well from mid into jungle. He's utilized his pick a lot, though. He knows all of his damage on Echo, and like if you go back and watch the Rift Shark game, he is literally perfectly optimizing his damage and the way he needs to output it. It was so disgusting to see. I love to see it. And the Hacker game, I thought he played super well. So
Yeah, I mean, I think in defense of the Rift Sharks, I think we are working through some growing pains. We were trying to do some experimenting with our rosters, trying out some things that had gone well previously. I do think they're a large factor of how the games went was just we simply underestimated Andromeda. I know in my predictions I predicted them fourth. I think I predicted them third.
mhm.
But clearly I don't think we played with respect to their team's strength. I think we were trying to do too much in terms of experimentation, and it left us pretty
Yeah.
vulnerable to just Cam absolutely dominating us. And then kind of talking about the Valorant Pirates versus the Spectres game. Spectres continues to be undefeated versus the Valorant Pirates this season. I believe it's 4-0 at this point. It could
Yeah.
just be a selectively bad matchup into that team. I'm not necessarily sure. I felt like the first game for Valorant Pirates looked pretty good. They just weren't able to really execute on a macro level. It felt
Yeah.
like they were doing pretty well. The Darius had a lead. The Zaya Karma lane looked very good. There were just a few team fights where the Galio gets caught out, where the Galio really wants to kind of stay out of the fight initially and then engage afterwards.
Mhm.
So is it just
I
a
don't
bit
think I
sloppy?
watched
I
game
don't.
one.
Okay, well I'll talk about it then.
Yeah,
But
yeah, sorry.
it was a
Continue.
huge, really good early lead for the Valorant Pirates. It just felt like the macro kind of fell apart a bit, which is honestly nothing that can't be fixed pretty easily. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I felt their draft was pretty good. I don't think there were any super obvious weaknesses. Obviously, Swain's pretty hard to play into with like Darius, Galio as your main carries, but I really did think there was a lot going for them. And then in the second game, I don't actually think I finished watching it.
Oh, I did finish that one. So
So
you
yeah,
get to
so
talk
you
about
talk
game one.
about
I
game
get to
two.
talk about game two. I think Rex and Avery, or not Avery, they're mid laner.
This is the
Savaris.
Rek'Sai game, right?
Yeah, this is the Rek'Sai game.
Yeah, I think I
I
got
think
as far as draft, and then
yeah,
didn't couldn't
I think
watch.
Rex and Savaris really paired up super well in this game, utilizing their mid jungle 2v2. I think they played the macro really well. I think Rex egoed a couple times. Standard jungle behavior. All these jungle players are raging egomaniacs who love showing how broken their role is. But like, they Rex was really proactive on the map, getting off early ganks versus the Maokai who wants to farm more. I think Spectres did a really good job of shutting down the arguable better jungler in Maokai. Just utilizing the early game power that they had. They drafted a lot for early game and played for it really well. Utilizing like an Ezreal pick to mitigate their bot lane matchup as well. I think it was just like really well played all around. I think Aya had like an Amumu pick that had potential in the lane. They looked for like a lot of aggressive fights versus like the Soraka Ezreal. So I think Valorant Pirates definitely had a chance in the game. It's just I think Spectres kind of took their early game lead and slammed it. So really did like to see that. Uh, I think Spectres does have like a lot of macro knowledge. Like Rex is obviously like a high level player who has been able to execute, has hit masters before in solo queue. So I think a lot of that game knowledge is kind of showing in like the way they play. Like they are making like the correct calls a lot to try and close out these games. Not to shout them out or anything, but I just think they also like have hit the ground running a little bit. Like I think they have like a lot of decent team synergy with the way they're playing. Avery is like also playing a lot really well on these like weak side top laners into like some of the stronger matchups, especially into like a player like Heroic who's also super high elo and stuff. Being able to like go even in that lane and make sure your team is able to carry on these like picks like Ornn, these scaling picks that still provide a lot of utility and stuff is like super valuable. So
Yeah, I do think my interesting takeaway from the Spectres was that there's all this talk about Hong and Rex being like the focal points of this team.
yeah,
But while Rex
which
was
is fair.
still in this game, he wasn't the one playing AD carry. So I think there, Caesarius definitely deserves a huge shout out here. Played really
Yeah,
well. I believe he got MVP for one of the games. I don't remember which one.
yeah.
It
The
was,
ADC one.
I think
The Caitlyn one. The
he
Caitlyn
played
one. First
ADC
one.
both games.
The Caitlyn one. The Caitlyn one. Game one.
Okay,
Sorry, my
but
bad.
he
I
did
think.
receive the MVP for the Caitlyn game. I think being able to step up into a position where your team is known for being strong in that position and it's not necessarily you being the one that is strong is really impressive. And I think it shows a lot of flexibility for this team. This
Yeah.
could be a roster that we see more of. I'd be
Yeah.
interested to kind of see how it goes.
I will
I
say I do
think,
think I do want to see what Vectors is like when they have N as their starting jungler. N has a very different play style from the way Rex plays, but Rex also is like a very strong bot lane type player. So like it could like even out and like if they can like set up their game plan correct, then I think it still could be like even stronger than like what they showed today. It could be about the same. We'll have to see. It is an interesting concept though. I do like that they're trying like these rosters early on in the season just to
yeah.
like get a
I mean,
feel for
I
like
will
the
say
field.
this was due to extenuating circumstances. I think this was the only roster they could run. Um,
Yeah, it was. I mean, I can
yeah,
play obviously, right? Surely.
surely. Surely this is a real
Surely.
thing that can happen. Surely you are not offered any offers by teams where you could actually play and you turn them down.
I would never. I would
Surely,
never.
surely
Surely
this
not.
wouldn't happen.
Surely not.
But yeah,
I would
anyway,
not
I
join a team
think
just to coach
uh,
or something.
flexibility and depth of roster, I think, is something really interesting. I think it turned out really well here. Obviously, did not work as well for the Rift Sharks. The cool thing is we did get to see all 9 players of the Rift Sharks play. I
Yeah.
think this is the only team where that's true. I'm actually gonna
Yeah.
swap over here. Um,
Yeah. Oh, I did want to shout out. I think Alana played super well in the Rift Sharks game.
Yep.
Being the weak side top laner on their team. I know it was like mostly the cam show, but like not being a detriment into your team when you're like the weakest player, arguably, is like super strong. So I wanted to shout her out real quick. Really well played from them. So and I think Stanley also performed pretty well. Very strong in both games. Had a lot of clutch Ash arrows when he was playing it.
Yep.
Just so we don't completely drown out everyone else in the camp show.
Yes.
Uh,
Also, the Victor was fucking crazy. Oops, we forgot to ban the
Agreed.
Victor. Thought it wouldn't matter. My bad.
That's crazy. I do think that's a bit
Yeah.
sitter into like the I've been gassing up the Seraph item all fucking day. This item is so fucking strong,
Yeah,
especially
I
on a
mean,
scaling case
honestly,
like
like I
Victor.
think there was one play where I was on the Belveth. I thought the game plan would be pretty simple: just get a kill and a reset onto either the center or the Victor, and then we're able to kind of roll the fights. I go, holy shit, we got Victor here. We go in, and then oh, he has a 600 health shield. Where did this come from? Kind of
This
forgot about
item is
some item
balanced, I
changes
swear.
right here.
So broken. I
But
hate
yeah,
it so much.
also while we're on the topic of Andromeda, um, I will say, Mason, it might make sense to pull up the Twitch stream because I'm not screen sharing to you.
No,
But
I see it.
okay, yeah, Dominic as a sub actually did really well. We've previously seen him play some top lane and some support, but he
A
did
little bit of Singe gameplay thoughts.
he played some support in this series. He played, I believe, the Senna and the Rakan. Played really really well. Added some depth to the flexing of this team. Andromeda was already kind of known for the ability to flex their players around, and having Dominic as a sub who is listed as a true fill player made it really hard to draft against them, and he just played super super well. So I want to give it a shout out to them. I think Russ and Manny are the two players on this team that we haven't yet seen this season. So looking
Yeah.
forward to see how they play when they do get some playing time. Looking at MVP, Heroic, Jackson, Steve, Will, and Aya is who we saw play this week. Valor we saw play a little bit in Frostbite. Casper and Wolf, I believe we haven't gotten to see play yet at all. So again, I'm excited to see how they do. I think Wolf in the jungle could be pretty fun. If Jackson can ever not play, looking forward
Yeah.
to that. And
I think
then
Valor could also be a. Can he play on main roster, or
yeah,
does he always have to sub
yeah.
out?
No,
Yeah,
Valor. Valor's a valid roster. I think Valor was just busy at work.
Okay. So they might
Yeah,
play a little more, but
yeah. So I don't know. I think Steve played really well in Frostbite when we played against him, but I think
yeah,
it could have just been a lot to the counterpick. I think when the Galio was counterpicked, he kind of struggled a little bit more.
yeah,
I don't remember, or I guess I didn't watch the second game of the series, so I don't know
yeah. It was
who got
Syndra
the
into
counter.
Silas. I think he just played into didn't play respectfully enough of Rex's
Gotcha.
game plan. The 2v2 in that series from Rex and Sarveris. Yeah, Sarveris was really insane. I really liked the way they set themselves up for success. So
Yeah, I think a huge theme this week was just jungle is really, really strong. I think last
no, the
season,
role's weak.
we saw a lot of the opposite, where jungle didn't
Yeah,
necessarily matter as much. Like we saw, obviously you and then Jonah had really standout performances in a lot of games, which kind of kicked you up pretty high on the MVP ladder. But a lot of players weren't necessarily able to utilize the jungle well. I'm
Mhm.
not sure if that's because we have more good players in the jungle or just the role got changed, which favors its strength. But I am leaning towards the first one. I think we just have more good players playing in the jungle, which makes it look
Yeah.
stronger.
I'd argue that. Also, I will say I think the jungle role is a little strong right now. It's also like a lot more beginner friendly. It's like really hard to punish people right now that are jungling. The way catch up experience works, it's like, or like the how the pet system works, where you get bonus streaks if you don't farm, and you can just take one camp, catch all the way back up to the farming jungler. Makes farming feel really weak. So like, I think the jungle just has way more impact than it should, and I think I saw recently that they are looking to adjust it, so we'll have to see how that impacts
Interesting.
games. But
That might save a few teams against Andromeda. I'm not gonna lie. We'll see.
we'll have to see that.
Yeah, and we will move on to MetaBusters here. We saw their full starting lineup play here. Joey, I believe, got some game time in Frostbite, as did Brewer and Garrett. I believe Garrett didn't get any time with his own team, so that could be something interesting to play. I think Garrett can actually just start over Jacob. I think that lineup could be pretty interesting. We could
Yeah,
have something like Silico, or we could do like Hidiri top, Noam jungle, Silico back on mid lane, and then Garrett Honan. I think could be a really strong roster from this, just utilizing some of their depth. And I do think Joey in for Silico is a sub we're likely going to see, as well
Yeah,
as Brewer in as well. I think both of those players are intended as a pretty plug and play
yeah,
replacement for Silico. I
yeah.
wouldn't be too surprised if we saw Silico in roles other than support here. I believe
Agreed.
these were his two first support games in the entire server, and they didn't
Not the
necessarily go
strongest showing.
super well. The
His Twitch was
Karthus,
pretty good.
please, like Seraphine Karthus guys, like I know you're the meta busters, but like that was fucking atrocious. I
Yeah, it was a little
like
sus, bro.
I think it's good if you have Karthus farm,
Yeah, maybe.
but we didn't.
I will say I
The
have gotten
Twitch
to
is
see
really good
them
though.
from Noam. They are looking to shake up rosters a little bit next week, so I will be excited to see that. Uh, I think we don't. I think okay. I have like mixed opinions on this team overall, but I think we don't really have an accurate assessment of like how strong their players are because of the way that they drafted. I don't think their drafts are like uh conducive of like good play. Like the drafts are like kind of lose like kind of lost in the game. I'm not gonna lie from
Agree.
the jump. So I will be curious if they play a little more standard, and I would like to see them on like standard drafts and see how they play. But
Yeah, I mean, I do think.
Noam also says that he thinks their drafts are kind of dog shit. Thank you for that. I do fucking agree. They were kind of hideous to look at from a
I mean,
uh
to be fair, if
from a casting
your brand is
perspective.
the
So
meta busters, I'd be surprised if your drafts did look like good by the
yeah,
book. Um,
yeah. But
so
I think there
it is
is
what
like
it
a way
is.
to draft and like not play meta. Like
Yeah.
I think like Rek'Sai, for example, from Rek'Sai isn't even like a good champion right now. And it's like he still like was able to slam the game and stuff. So I think there is ways to play like non-standard stuff right now. Because like the meta right now is like Maokai. We saw Cam playing like the carry style with like the Echo. I think that was really good. But like most people are playing like tankier champions with
Mhm.
bruisers and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and I mean, I think at least some players on this team have had success in the past. I know Silica specifically has
Silica,
done really well on Teemo Jungle, and like the Leona top has done well. So I
yeah,
think stuff like that, where you're still kind of filling what you need to, and not opening
yeah.
yourself up to really bad matchups, could be something to look for in the future.
Hmm.
Moving on to the
Agreed.
Nutbusters, we haven't seen Doki play. I think we actually went pretty far in depth with this last week, so I don't want to spend too much time onto it.
On Doki or the team in general? Because I think I had like a
Doki
couple quick thoughts.
specifically,
Yeah,
I think we talked a lot about it. Just how Doki could be like a kind of sword and shield comparison for Mike, like you
yeah,
said, and it kind of opens up Blake to play across the map. And we've already seen how like Taxi and Alex also have really good bot lane synergy. So
yeah.
I think
Uh,
that's pretty much as expected.
I will say I think PB played a lot better than I thought they would, and Alex. I think their bot lane was actually like a fairly strong point for them in both games. Sort of like these, or I guess Caitlyn isn't like a long range utility, or it's just like these guaranteed damage types. Caitlyn was able to get the early lead and was able to like snowball the game so that the Yone could scale up. I think that was really good. And then like the Varus with like the utility ultimates, I think their bot lane had like a lot of power. They drafted really well for their bot lane as well. Uh, these picks like the Lux and the Renata, they utilize these picks really well in draft. I think this is like where Blake shines as a drafter. I know we like meme on the Ivern Rengar, like his obsession with Ivern, all this nonsense, but it's like he knows what he's doing in draft, like at its core. Like Renata Varus is a really solid lane. He's pairing it up with like the Nocturne and the Oriana. These are just like good drafts. These are like really good drafts. Like you have the Renata bailout and stuff on top of like the you can like Nocturne ult into the hostile takeover. These are just like really good synergies that they set up with like the Oriana Shockwave as well. So I am curious to see how this team continues to improve with their really good champion pools as well. So
Yeah, I mean, I think saying that PB is kind of like outperforming expectations is kind of underselling him a little bit. He performed really well in all of his sign-up games, and I think why he's kind of shocking, I guess, would just be because we didn't get to see him in the Frostbite tournament. But he's
Yeah.
just genuinely a pretty good player, so I'm not super surprised. I do think getting to see the kind of bot lane synergy with Alex
Mm,
and PB together was really nice, though,
agreed.
because I think it's happened in a couple games, and I think it hasn't gone super well. But it could just be like signups are not super indicative of how it works when you're in a full five stack. But yeah, getting to see
Okay.
those two play together was pretty strong. But I
I am
do
getting
think,
told it wasn't Blake drafting. Okay. Whoever was doing draft for New York Nutbusters, round of applause. Really good shit. I like to see it. Keep doing your drafts. Don't let Blake anywhere near your draft, please. Thank you. Anyways.
yeah, but I think Spectres and Rift Sharks probably have the two most interesting sub situations just because we got to see a lot of it
Yeah.
this week. I think since we've seen less players from Spectres, we can go over them first.
Okay.
Obviously, we could just write off you because you're never playing ever. And from what
What do you
I've
mean? I can play. I can play. Trust, trust,
surely
trust, trust,
see, I
trust,
can
trust,
even
trust.
show you how there's a so
That's
sad.
so tough. That's so
I
tough.
can show
That's
you
crazy.
the totally real roster where you can play games. And I've heard that Suki is actually not going to be available on any of the game days, so we can kind of cut it down to 7 players.
Mhm.
Rex and Hong obviously cannot play at the same time, but any other combination appears to be pretty valid. Opening up the flex potential for Cesarius to be able to play AD carry showed that he had pretty good synergy with Kathy. I don't know how much they've gotten to really practice, but I
Yeah.
think there could be the possibility of Hong playing mid lane like he did a bit in the previous season. I think
Yeah.
some roster like this could be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I know Rex can play some top lane and jungle. So we could also
Yeah. I think
see
you should.
something like one of these rosters
Yeah.
where we have, or I guess this is the one that we just saw, and it was very good. Definitely
Yeah.
not something to laugh at. So I think
Yeah.
kind of
Definitely something to
seeing
strength as
this
well.
flexibility is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I also
We
think,
could also have and mid as well if they ever want to play. There was some talk about
true.
that. And it's like there's like a lot of options here. I think if Suki ever does play, I think there's like a lot of room for like mid jungle flexes, but that's like a question mark in and of itself. So
Right.
probably not worth discussing.
Yeah, I mean, I
I am
think
curious if we ever sub in Hong. Uh,
you mean sub
I
in the
think
starter, bro. Like,
yeah, I don't think he's starting, bro. It's crazy. Anyways, I don't know. I think Rex is just a little bit more on form nowadays. Like he's been playing a lot of solo queue, he's been spamming the ladder, all this other fun stuff. But we'll have to see, TM.
yeah, I mean, so we're basically saying the person who is playing in his last potential season of Scrim Zone is just washed and not worth playing. I think that's kind of slanderous. I
True,
think if that is the
real.
mentality of someone on the Spectres, they could consider trading Hongbaba to a team.
Uh
Potentially.
huh.
Could be interesting. See if that could
Yeah.
happen. But I do think the cool thing about the Spectres is I think all 7 of their players have pretty unique playstyles. I think
Yeah.
Avery and Sarvis are like the only two I'd say are pretty similar. They both like to play the kind of like scrappy mechanical outplay champions
Uh huh.
that have like a lot
And
of
then
skill
or
expression in solo lanes. Yeah, I mean Avery did play like a fucking bedge ass champion, but you know it happens.
sometimes you just need to play
Right.
the veg ass champion,
Sometimes the
bro.
captain says play this champion, or whoever's doing draft just says play it, and you're kind of stuck and don't have a choice to do so. But
Yeah,
I think
me last
that's
season,
the
true.
only like real overlap in play style between these seven
I am
players.
a role player. They want veg, I give veg. I'm sorry, King. It's just how it is sometimes.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of flexibility here. So I'm excited to kind of see how these rosters line up. I think
Mhm.
with the Spectres though, the rosters are going to be a lot more set on just which players are available to show up, more so than
Yeah.
necessarily like picking out specific rosters. Then on that note, I will go to the Rift Sharks. The rosters that we saw yesterday, I am going to bring up real quick. This is the one that we saw in the second game, where we have Michael top lane, Jonah and Drago as the jungle mid duo, and then Eric and Healy at the bot lane. I do think there is actually a lot of potential for us in the second game with this roster. We started
Yeah.
off pretty far behind, but I think if that hadn't happened, we started to see Eric and Healy get a lot of work done in the bot lane, and then the GP was scaling. And honestly, I think Jonah played the second game pretty well. He didn't
Yeah.
really give over too many resources to the other team. Played pretty well. It was just he was at such a deficit from Cam being really far
Yeah.
ahead that it made it really hard for him to impact the game.
I think I will argue. I think Cam just was like playing a little more early game. Jenna was arguably playing for like a little more scaling, but Cam was just looking to get the ball rolling, and I think that's how you're supposed to be playing jungle nowadays. Is because like you want to play for like more of a snowball playstyle. Like I think it kind of showed with like Mike and Cam, like and Rex. Snowballing junglers are like super strong right now, and so like I think you can't really play like a role player jungle playstyle anymore. But that could be argued because like there's like a lot of strong tanks. So I think it's just really up in the air. Uh, I will say I think Eric O Healy bot lane was really good. They did kind of stomp the other bot lane. I think there was just a few itemization errors that they needed to iron out. Like Eric O was still building Eclipse on Draven. That's not the build anymore. I told him that afterwards. He was like, "Yeah, I just was following OPGG." That's really fair. They haven't been playing in a while. I think if this team is able to get a little more time in the cooker, let them cook. It's just like there's potential for like a lot of scaling for this team. So I am really excited to see them continue moving forward. I think also in game one they had like a really
Hold on, let me swap it over.
yeah. But like the game one draft, uh,
Oh.
I think they did utilize. Did you guys utilize the MF flex at all, or is that leaks?
We were attempting to. We just were trying to
Yeah,
save the counter pick.
yeah,
I believe because we picked Kate
mhm,
fourth, and then I'm trying to think of what we picked. I think we picked Darius last. So
yeah,
we did choose to burn the flex away from the MF, um, just so that we could get the Darius last pick, which I
yeah, which
think
is fair.
it did some stuff. It was just we weren't really able to get the ball rolling. With
Yeah,
the
I think
Belveth
there's just a
Darius,
few.
you really want the early plays to go really well, and
Yeah,
the opposite happened, which I think is definitely some fault of our own gameplay and also just Cam played well, and he was able to
phenomenally.
get.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, he got stuff going on like mid and bot lane just before we
yeah,
were able to get anything going with top, and I think a lot of that does go to like Alana played it super well. As you were saying
yeah.
earlier, like we were trying to get the Darius and Belveth ahead, and if you're
Lana's just
not
like no.
able to get Belveth ahead early, it's really tough for her to get going late, especially
Yeah,
into a team comp like that. Because even though she is a strong late game champion, if she doesn't have her form, she doesn't really do anything.
yeah. I was talking about it on the cast
Yeah.
actually. I think. This is the one I saw casted. I'm pretty sure. I think Belveth is like a weird champion to try to analyze. It's sort of like a weird cheese champion that you want to like cheese early heralds on,
Mm.
and like try to snowball off that, and then maybe you can go back to like a scaling type thing if you can't snowball the game hard enough. But it's like her win rate at like 20 minutes is like super high, and then it plummets at like 30 minutes, and it
Yeah.
goes back up at like 40 minutes. So I just think this champion is like a little too reliant on like solo queue factors, if you know what I mean, like getting
Yeah.
snowballs, getting free kills, and it's like really hard to punish unless you're a lot better than the enemy jungler. But I do like the confidence in picking the champion. It's a bit of an ego pick, honestly, and I'm like, yeah, go for it, man. It's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I
TM.
will say part of it is we thought it was the Mordekaiser jungle.
Yeah,
Like as I was saying earlier, I think Dominic getting subbed in really broke a lot of our draft plans because we were planning on it being Adam top 100%. Because I do think if
yeah,
Adam is in for Andromeda, he's not going to really be playing other lanes.
yeah,
So we saw that Mordekaiser, we go, this is probably going to be for Alana, and then that means she's jungle because all of our planning was assuming that Adam would be top, and I know Dominic has played top in the past, so we just didn't necessarily think of the possibility of him being a support flex, and I think Mordekaiser does not have the early gank pressure that the Heck Room does.
yeah,
So we figured Belvis is actually a safe pick because we should be able to be more proactive on the map with it. And
mhm.
we were able to secure the early Rift Herald. There was just they
You didn't get the
played
chance to get the minions,
yeah,
right?
they played the game super well, and they got
Yeah,
a lot of like just skirmishes were going really well for them. So the Belveth, me, was just always dead when I was trying to deploy the Rift Herald. So
yeah,
they just played really well to kind of neutralize out the Belveth factor. But we were definitely itemizing really heavy into the early snowball draft. We knew that we need to get something going early
yeah.
because we didn't have the potential to go super late, and it just didn't ultimately pan out. I think a lot of that was the mechanical misplay, or like mechanical misplays and macro misplays were a big
Yeah.
factor of that. I will say in both the Rift Sharks games versus Andromeda, we were able to keep the gold literally dead even until 26 minutes into the game. So I don't
Okay.
think either of the games were necessarily stomps. It was just
Yeah.
we were able to keep it really close, and then things started slipping out of hand.
Mhm.
And then it was just too much. I think that's kind of how games go when there's one character that's really fed and you're winning everywhere
Yeah.
else on the map. It just really comes down to a few important team
To
fights. Are you
neutralize.
able to hold this champion to not be able to obliterate your entire
Yeah.
team? And ultimately, the answer was no. We weren't able to do that.
Echo moment, TM.
And the hacker room was disgusting as
Yeah.
well. It was really hard to just play around it. So
Did you guys account for cam jungling at all?
yeah, I mean, we put bans against it. We just didn't know it was going to be that good. And I think it's
Okay.
also tough like, if you know that someone is going to play a role, you don't necessarily know their play style in it. Like, you can go on OPGG
Yeah.
and you can go, oh, look, this player's been playing a bunch of jungle. These are some champions they play, but you don't know that they're going to gank like 4 lanes in the first 6 minutes of the game. So you
Yeah.
can't necessarily communicate, hey, we're going to play really safe so that we don't die to these early ganks from this
Mhm.
jungler who ganks really early if you have no clue that the jungler is going to gank really early,
Yeah.
which is, I
Yeah.
think,
That makes
where
sense.
we really fell into the trap. And I think the downside of swapping out 4 players from the roster is if we played the same roster twice, we could have gone, oh, this guy's going to gank really hard early. And like we can say that to the players that are going to fill our spots in the next game, but
Yeah.
they're not going to just intuitively know from having just played a game against this jungler that that's the playstyle he has.
Yeah.
So
Less
I
time to
think,
adapt. Yeah.
yeah, I think it had us fall victim to the same kind of gameplay style twice in a row, which was pretty
Yeah.
rough.
I think that's like a problem with like the T1 10-man roster as well. It's sort of like the issue with like having these big rosters. It's like some of the players just don't get the chance to gel. It's like hard to build like team synergy. So it is like it can be like a potential trap area for like these bigger rosters, but we'll have to see how that plays out for the rest
Yeah,
of the
I mean,
season,
I
I
will
guess.
say we were able to get some practice games in, so I don't think necessarily
Yeah.
lack of synergy was the issue. I think it was that we
Uh,
swapped out mid-series, so it was just unable to learn from the other team
yeah, that
instead
makes
of not having like synergy themselves. Like as you said, like Healy and Eric were able to play pretty well, and
uh
I felt like there was an attempt between Joel and I to do really well on the top side. It just Alana outplayed us and Cam outplayed us around the map, so we
Yeah,
weren't
that's
really
my
able to
mid
get it
laner.
done.
You can't have him, Dean. Sorry, that's mine.
Except
It
he's
only
a
works with me, bro.
jungler, ha 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 ha.
True.
But yeah, I don't know. Is there a lineup that you'd like to see from the Rift Sharks? Just I don't know.
I don't know if any of them work. I could see like I would like to see Dean return to AD carry. Uh, is there any lineup where you do Dean AD carry, Jonah jungle? I don't think so, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
What mid laner
Is
do
it
you want
just
us to
this?
have? We have one, two, three, four,
Wait,
five
could
mid
you do Healy
laners.
bot? Is that a play?
Do you want Healy support?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Healy support like
We
that.
can
Is that
do
doable?
this. That's just our starting roster.
Oh, yeah. I would like to see this
It's okay.
iteration of the
Mason
starting
Mason
roster.
with his absolute giga brain, play your starters. Is this
Yeah,
lineup even possible? Can they do
I
this?
didn't even know. Hold on, you guys have so many subs. It's kind of hard to keep track. I do think this is like a decent roster, though. No?
It's okay. Mason has pulled all of his collective brain cells together and deduced that the
Yeah.
starting roster is the one that he wants
Wait,
to
I
see.
do want to see the starting roster though. You guys didn't play it at
Uh,
all, so
I
I'm
actually,
curious how that
I
goes.
think we did. I think this is the roster we played in
And Frostbite?
Frostbite where we got the fastest win of the tournament. So maybe you're onto something.
Yeah, dude. Dude, return to basics, Dean Jones. God, don't clown me for being based, man. What the fuck?
So true. Okay, well, we might see something different next week. So no,
Yeah.
no spoilers or anything. Because I believe we are against the Nut Bust. No, the Meta Busters. One of the Busters teams. It's very hard to remember, especially because we're playing them in succession. The next week we are playing the Nut Busters. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I don't necessarily want to go in predictions yet. So is there a specific like game or team that you'd like to talk about for a bit?
From this week?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we covered most of them. I'm not gonna lie. Like, um, hold on. I kind of want to. Did we cover the like last patch or the micro patch? I think so, right? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, we talked about it a little bit. I am actually just going to spotlight the champions that were picked just across the last
Yeah,
weekend. There was only one champion that was picked 3 times, and it was Caitlyn. Has a
yeah.
4.5 KD, 67% win rate.
Champion
Played
looks a little strong.
insanely well. It was played by
Yeah.
3 different champions, so no one actually played it twice. Alex, Caesarius, and Healy were the 3 champions, or the 3 players who played it.
Mhm. Looks like a
Alex,
strong ADC.
yeah, I think she's not necessarily considered the best overall on the patch, but I think
Yeah,
her ability in our specific meta to kind of exploit um, like a unevenness in the matchup is
yeah.
pretty important.
I will say it's also like not to be that guy, but Rex isn't playing bot lane, so I don't think we're gonna see like a lot of different picks in the bot lane as well. Like there's like I think it was just Caitlyn and Varus for the most part, and then like
Yeah,
Seraphine and
filtering
Karthus.
down to just bot lane. We actually saw a lot of different bot laners. We had 3 games of Caitlyn, and then every other champion was unique. So we saw Ashe, we saw Draven, we saw Ezreal,
Yeah.
Kai'Sa, Seraphine, Sivir, Varus,
Okay.
Victor, and Xayah.
I
So I actually
did not
think,
pay attention. Oh my
yeah,
lord.
I think the meta is actually pretty diverse here.
Okay.
Kai'Sa, Draven, Ezreal, Xayah, Varus are all considered pretty strong. I think Sivir,
Yeah.
Seraphine, and Ashe are all kind of a step down. I think Ashe is considered a pretty good support right now, as much as
Yeah.
I hate to admit it. These AD carry support meta, ugh, disgusting.
Kind of base,
And
to be honest.
Victor's just Stanley being Stanley. So,
Yeah, I think
um,
that that'll remain their pocket pick. I am kind of curious to see like the Twitch ADC potentially come out. I think there's like a lot of validity to it. I think it's pulling a lot of bans for Will. Uh, we'll have to see if it ever gets touched.
yeah, I
What
don't
else is
actually
there?
remember if it was banned in the Spectres series. Here, we'll
No,
pull it
they
up.
banned it. They banned it. I'm
They
pretty
they
sure.
did. Okay.
I'm pretty sure. They banned it. I'm
They
pretty
they
sure.
did. Oh
You
shoot!
can
I'm
pull it up
watching
though.
myself. That's not what I was trying to do.
Uh,
Can you not go to channel videos? Okay, here we go. This is the one I wanted to look at. So it looks like in the first draft, Twitch was banned, and then in the second one, it is another Twitch ban. Twitch and Bard were the 2 champions taken away both times. But yeah,
yeah. That makes sense. I do think I kind of agree the meta bot lane is pretty diverse, but like I think Caitlyn is probably like a bit stronger than the rest of them. So we'll see how it shakes out.
yeah. I mean, of course,
See
we
what
are
other bot
saying
laners get
all of
picked.
this without the GOAT AD carry being introduced back into the bot lane because I was on a
True.
fucking jungle eco trip last week. So, uh,
True.
whatever.
So
Okay,
true.
I'm not gonna lie. In the scrims, in ranked flex, and like all the shit that I was playing, I went fucking crazy with it. So
Yeah,
my
but then you pick Velveth.
well, you know,
That's
it
your
is what
fault,
it
bro. If you
is.
want to be the jungle goat, you gotta pick things that aren't fucking Velveth, bro. Like what?
Okay, but Belveth did well in the Frostbite tournament. Oh well.
Yeah, and then you got fucking ratioed by Cam Sakarim, bro. Like, don't.
Yeah,
It's not good, bro. You're not him, bro. Sorry, King.
so
Anyways,
true.
um,
So
I
okay,
think
so anyway, we might see some classics return in the bot lane.
yeah, like the
I
Kalista, the
I
Jhin.
don't know if Tristana is particularly good in the meta right now, so we might not see that, but it is what
I
it
mean,
is.
Rex is a proficient Tristana player, so we might see it. Who knows,
Yeah,
man?
I
I'm
just meant
curious to see how it
the
goes.
legendary Dean Tristana permaband is
True.
probably that's probably not coming back, but we'll
It could
see.
be. Yep.
Um, we
You want to
might
jump
we
over
might
to
see
support?
the Inting Aphelios could make
Oh,
a return.
true. The
To be
Aphelios. The
fair,
Aphelios.
Aphelios cracked in the regular season, terrible in playoffs, according to history.
True.
So we'll see. Support Nami is the only champion to be picked twice. Everything else is unique. Nami went 1-1. The 2 players to play that are Kathy and Layla. No Jacob on the Nami, so is what it is.
That
Amumu,
is.
Blitzcrank, Karma, Karthus, Lux, Rakan, Renata, Senna, Soraka, and Twitch. So a very diverse set of 80 carries here. We
Yeah.
only had one Cringe Lord playing the traditional 80 carry in the support meta. Silico, you're excused only because you're on the meta busters, so you
Uh,
have to play cringe
uh,
things. But if anyone locks in Caitlyn support, Callista support, um,
reported.
Ash support,
We are checking your
e-
PayPal.
Jin support, Ash support excused because of last season, but any of those other three, like whatever Blake says he's gonna do to people in solo queue, like he's probably gonna do it to you. So I just like wouldn't
Bro.
do it preemptively.
You're
Um,
not carry. I hate
right.
to break
So
it
like
to you.
if you're
You are not
thinking in your or Barrel, you're neither of those two players, right? So if you're
carry.
sitting in draft and you're thinking to yourself, oh my god, this might be a Caitlyn support angle, this might be a Jin support angle, just don't do it. Like
Yeah.
please just don't. Like
I
even
do think there's
if you pick it and you go 50, 0, and 200, I literally don't care. You still suck.
that's crazy. I do
Now
think
this may be provoking metabusters to do it, just so I can laugh at them when they fail
true.
against us. So
Based. So based.
we'll
I
see.
will say I think support meta is pretty wide right now, especially in like lower like I know like all these pokes like range supports are like all the rage right now in pro play, but I think these like tankier champions like the Nautilus, like these enchanters like the Soraka and stuff are still really strong. Uh, items like Radiant Virtue on like supports are like really strong right now. Just in general, it's just like I think there's like a lot of options. We might see the Rel again from like PB and Aya. I think they were like really proficient Rel players. So better of us. True. Um.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think the Renata is actually a champion that we'll probably end up seeing a lot of. Karma, I think we'll probably end up seeing more of. I
Yeah.
think we actually didn't see it from. Yeah, we actually picked the Nami instead of the Karma. It is
Uh-huh.
something that Layla likes to play a lot of. We just picked it to deny the Victor Nami lane, which is actually pretty
Yeah.
good. In hindsight, considering Dave wasn't playing bot lane, it might not have been the greatest pick. But I don't know. We can lament about that another day. I think Lux coming out to complement the Caitlyn is something we could see more of. If
Or
we continue to see
busting.
Caitlyn
Yeah.
getting picks, we could see Morgana. That's
Yeah.
another good
The
champion.
classics. Yep.
But yeah, we have a pretty good blend of tanks. Not as many tanks as I would like to see, but I believe they're getting buffed in the upcoming patch.
Yeah. AP Alistar. Woo.
Surely. But I think Braum buffs are coming. I think I saw Rakan in there.
Yeah,
So
they're
very fun
to be
champions.
fair, I do think those champions are like they're moving them into like this weird flex category. It's like they're buffing like AP ratios on Alistar, which is like good for our top lane Alistar if you build like demonic. They're
Gotcha. I
buffing
actually
like
didn't look at these. Yeah.
yeah, I was looking at them. They're buffing. I think Braum is like the only one for support, and I think he's already like situationally good. I watched like Ellis's video on it. It's like a pretty solid watch and read into it. There's like a couple Nautilus buffs, which could be good for Nautilus jungle. Meta Busters, I'm calling you by the way. Play Nautilus jungle. I promise it's good. No beta roonies. They're buffing like the clear speed with Riptide. I think it's getting like a little bit of a damage buff. Something to look out for sure. Pantheon is also getting like Q cooldown increase or Q cooldown decreased, so that's also really good for Pantheon jungle. Again, meta busters. I'm phoning you again one more time. Try some of these other off meta
Okay,
junglers and
actually, Metabusters just play fucking Caitlyn Callista support like game one, game two, and we'll take the free wins. Okay.
true.
I sincerely
True.
doubt your ability to perform on Caitlyn Callista bot. You should definitely not try it because I think it will go poorly. I don't know if this is gonna backfire or not, but I'm either guaranteeing
Yeah.
no one does it, or I'm guaranteeing that they'll play it into us and it'll be a really fun game. So
Yeah, but yeah, I
I'll
do
take
think like
either.
the support changes are coming in really cool. The Rakan changes are all AP changes as well. So Rakan mid, like as a flex, is like a potential thing. I would be kind of interested in seeing it. Don't ask my opinion on Draven support. I wasn't planning on it, Blake. Uh, uh, but like yeah, I think there's like a lot of potential next patch for like some interesting flexes out of like support. So I think it's something to watch out for, especially since it's like a lower powered format, so we can get away with like a little bit more stuff. So I am curious to see how it goes.
Yep. I think after that we can go ahead and kick it into the mid lane.
Yeah, we're
Galio
just
and
moving.
Swain are the only two champions we saw two of. They're
Yeah.
very good team fight champions. I think we saw better execution of that around the Swain, although the Galio actually did end up performing better. The two players who played the Galio were Dave and Steve. I
Mhm.
think Steve played pretty well in the early game, but Dave did end up performing better just because his team played really well that game.
I
And
think
also
also they
just he played it into the misfortune and just punished the matchup super, super well.
yeah. I think he paired up really well with his jungler as well. I was talking a lot on the cast about it. The 2v2 roams from Cam and Dave, they set up a lot of plays for themselves early game in both games, and I really wanted to shout it out. Um, I think the Seraphine pick, it is like specifically for our Andromedas. Uh, I think there's like a lot of potential for like Seraphine as a flex to return. Like, it's good mid lane. The Seraph changes also help her as well. The shield makes her harder to punish in like the mid game. Support Seraphine's still decent. APC Seraphine might be decent. I haven't tested it personally. It doesn't sound terrible though. It's probably the same as last season. Um, I will also talk about the Silas a little bit. I do think the Silas flex is still alive. I'm not coping. This champion is good in two roles. We'll have to see how it goes though. Cesaris played it really well in the game versus uh, with the Rek'Sai. A lot of it just has like a lot of 2v2 power, so we'll have to see how that goes. I will say like some of the control mages are also really strong as well. Like we saw Taxi playing like the Oriana and like just providing a lot of synergy and CC with his team. So like these champions with like the Archangels changes are like really good. So we'll have to see how it shakes down, I think.
Yeah, I think the big thing to note for me in the mid lane is out of 6 games, we've had one mid lane that was like remotely close. If
Yeah.
we look at, we'll just go in backwards order. We had like 5-4-15 versus 5-10-1. Pretty
Mhm.
big stomp from the Seraphine, and then 4-1-14 versus 4-7-6.
Mhm.
Galio into Misfortune. Galio did very well. And then
Mhm.
Silas into Syndra 8-0-7 versus 0-8-0. That is
Mhm.
just complete demolition. Um,
Yeah. Shower should
three
go
six five
hard.
into 7-3-12 is also pretty disgusting.
Mhm.
And then Hidiri went 2-12 into Taxi going 10-2 and 14. And
Mhm.
then the only one that was pretty close was Taxi went 4-7-22 into Hidiri going 5-10 and 12.
Mhm.
This was Twisted Fate versus Swain. Both champions are pretty supportive, and I honestly do think Taxi had a potential to do very well that game. It just ended up looking pretty bad for him because Silico was able to take advantage of him. I
Yeah.
think Hidiri's kills were elsewhere on the map. I think the lane itself was not very even. Taxi seemed to be doing a lot better earlier.
Yeah.
So I think it would be interesting if this trend continues, where whichever player is able to do well in mid lane is able to just blow it open every single game. We could see a different
Yeah.
meta come out like that. Because some champions that normally take a while to scale but could come on pretty quickly could be interesting here. Like if a Syndra gets ahead early, that's pretty scary. Something like a
Yeah.
Corki could be interesting as well. Or any of those like skirmish heavy champions like
Yeah.
Irelia, Silas, maybe like a Yasuo or a Yone mid could be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Especially because I
Especially
think
paired
there's a
with like
lot
the jungle
of
meta right now.
exactly. Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
what something I've heard a lot in pro play discuss is just that mid jungle is OP.
Mhm.
So if we look at the mid jungle pairings, the Seraphine that got really far ahead had a Fed Echo behind it. The Gallia that got far ahead had a Fed Hecarim behind it.
Mhm.
The Silas had a Fed Rek'Sai with it.
Mhm.
The Swain had a pretty Fed Yi complementing it. In the close game, neither jungler really ran away with it. Mike got a lot done, but also died a lot, so wasn't really able to snowball the lead too far. And then we go to the last game, and the Fed Ori had a Fed Nocturne with it. So I think mid jungle
Yeah.
is super important. So if we could see some draft just focusing on the mid jungle synergy instead of
Yeah.
necessarily looking so much at trying to get counter picks for mid lane. And if you're
Yeah.
able to get both, that's what you really want to do. You want to find a
Yeah.
mid jungle that synergizes together and also is able to give you the edge in the matchup against the opposing mid jungle, specifically
Mhm.
looking at that mid lane, I think. Because
Yeah.
if you do go to gank, you can 100% guarantee that both mid laners and the jungle are going to be there. But the opposing jungler may or may not be there, so it's a bit of a less important factor in that 2v2 overall in the draft, I think.
Yeah. I will say like the champions that are like really good in jungle right now have a lot of synergy with like some of the mid laners, like Zac, for example, with like the Yasuo and stuff, or like Diana and whatnot. I think this combo should be coming back into like our scrims meta. It is really good. Uh I think it's just like stuff like Sejuani and stuff like a lot of these like tankier like low econ junglers are like coming back just to like because they like sort of counter like these hyper snowball champions if you can like match their ganks and then just like
Mhm.
provide utility while still being able to gank. I think that's like a potential like way to counter these like high econ super snowbally junglers. So I guess we should just transition into talking about jungle, I guess. TM.
Sure, sounds good. No jungle champion was picked more than once over the course of these 6 games.
Super
I'm
diverse
not going to
field.
list all of them, but it looks like a lot could be done. And honestly, this is a pretty expected shift considering the jungle changes. I'm just going to sort
Yep.
it by KD here. Echo and Nocturne were the 2 highest performing ones, followed by Rek'Sai, and Hecarim and Master Yi. And a lot of the more supportive junglers are on the bottom. I will say the
Yeah.
exception is the Belveth is down there pretty
Uh,
low, but I think that is just a factor of there was another carry jungler in the game against it that just outperformed
yeah.
it. But if we
Yeah.
look at the specific matchups, I'll just go back to the games real quick. We have Echo into Lilia. Lilia is not going to do as much early, so the Echo naturally does pretty well into it.
Mhm.
Hecarim, Belveth, same thing. Hecarim just has a little bit of a better advantage into the Belveth in the early game. Same with Rek'Sai, Maokai. And I think
Mhm.
Zac and Master Yi is a bit more interesting. I think that one has a lot more depth to it, but it's still the carry jungler ends up beating out the tank jungler.
Yeah.
Jarvan Udyr is the kind of one sleeper one where they're both kind of tank oriented junglers who have threat early, so it's not like
Mhm.
as clear cut. And then
Yeah.
the Nocturne carry outpaces the Scion jungle, so it looks like
Yeah.
these carry junglers are just doing a lot more than their tanky counterparts in the same game. And I think it's just because these teams aren't necessarily used to playing against this carry jungle playstyle, so they're allowing the
Yeah.
jungler to get a lot done in the early game to kind of accelerate it. And I think, as you were saying, the tank junglers or like the low econ junglers are able to match it. You just have to play around it correctly to not let the
Yeah.
carry jungler get fed early. And once that
Yeah.
happens, it's really doomed because the tank jungler's never going to be able to outpace it.
Yeah, you have to. There's okay. I know Blake perma clowns on like tank players and like, but like these type of champions, you do have to know how to mitigate snowballing as a mechanic, and it's like, uh, knowing how to play your ranges as like a tank jungler is super important. Like, being able to like space the enemy carry as like stopping them from snowballing is like super good or super important to know how to do. Like knowing their gank timers, their clear timers, their setups, all of this stuff is like super important to utilizing tank junglers. And since your clears are slower, or like they want to play in a certain way where you're looking to like scale up a little bit more and they're looking for like active plays. So you have to know when you can clear and when you can look for these ganks. And I think a lot of like junglers haven't had that tested on them recently because it's been more of like a farming play style in our little meta here. It's like I think if we look at like the last season, I was playing like nothing but fucking full clear junglers and just getting away with murder, I think. And it's like stuff like that I think is like getting punished a lot more this season. So yeah, like see look, these all of these like low econ
Zac,
like
Udyr, Shyvana, Lilia, Kane.
yeah.
I think Wukong is the highest that doesn't fall into that category. Um,
Yeah.
and then Vi,
And like
Jarvan, and then Master E is his own little monster. But yeah, a lot of these
yeah.
tank junglers are really high up there.
Mhm.
Very different meta than what we're seeing now.
Yeah. So it is like an interesting shift. I wonder if like people who play tanks will be able to adjust to it. I guess it's like a bit of a litmus test for this season.
Mhm.
So we'll have to see how it
Or we'll
goes.
have fucking 80 carry posers locking Belveth in the jungle and try to do something,
True.
but we'll see.
True. That's so true.
Yep, and then the top lane, I think the only champion who's been picked twice is Darius, which is very resembling the meta in LCS and LEC mostly. I think Darius hasn't been picked up as much in the eastern regions, but unfortunately, Darius is 0-2. I would like to see it perform better. I think both of these players actually did do quite well in lane. Joel and actually ended up, or both of them ended up positive row, going 6-5-1, and Joel went 4-3-5. I think both performed really well. It's just the teams aren't able to really completely snowball the game through the Darius. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if it's like the different comfort level on the champion or if it's just the jungle has influence on the game that if you do have a really good top laner, the like ability to play through it wasn't present. Some
Yeah.
of the other top performing top champions we've seen, Lilia did really well, and then a bunch of the other ones up top are Orange, Shen, Lowy, Mordekaiser. We'll skip the Yone and the Lilia just because that's just Blake being Blake. He
Yeah, I think there's
appears
like
to be the strongest top laner this season. Heroic
yeah,
played pretty well, but just wasn't able to perform to the extent that Blake did.
yeah,
But yeah, it looks like these tanks to just kind of facilitate these carry champions in the jungle
yep,
seems to be the way to go. This meta could change, but it looks like tanks doing well, with the exception of Thresh. But if we look at more carry focused champions like Darius, Aatrox, Gangplank, Camille, they tend to not do as well. Even Lilia is kind of she's like more supportive and like tanky in nature, even though she's not a direct tank. Yone I
yeah,
think would be the one outlier, but it's literally just Blake smurfed that game, so
yeah.
um, you can't
Bit of an
necessarily take it too
outlier,
much into
yeah.
account. Yeah, and I think we are running a bit low-ish on time,
Uh-huh.
so we'll
Any
just
closing thoughts then?
we'll do
Or do you just want
predictions.
to run?
Uh,
Okay, okay.
Yep.
I'm
And
down
then
for
we'll
this.
wrap up on that. Okay, so
Alright.
going into season five, the three games. The first one, hopefully on Thursday, these should start getting scheduled soon, are going to be Spectres versus the New York Nutbusters, the Metabusters versus the Rift Sharks on Friday, and then on Sunday to wrap up our week, we're going to have the Mass Valorant Pirates versus Andromeda.
Huh. You want to go
Uh,
first?
sure, I'll go first. Think the Spectres and the Nutbusters both had insane showings this week. I
Uh-huh.
think the Spectres are likely going to have the edge. I'm not sure if the Nutbusters are going to be able to catch them off guard, so I'm probably going to say 2-1 Spectres.
Okay.
I think it heavily depends on the Spectres lineup, but the Nutbusters have shown a very strong showing, but the Spectres have just looked super dominant. In their
Yeah.
games against an opponent who I think was actually playing in form, whereas the Metabusters, even if they're playing at their peak, they might be just as good as the Valorant Pirates. I think they definitely weren't playing to that. So I think it's
Okay.
fair to say that the Nutbusters had an easier time with their 2-0 than the Spectres did.
Yeah.
Metabusters
Agreed.
versus Rift Sharks, again, I'm going to predict 2-0 Rift Sharks. I just have to.
Okay.
And then the Valorant Pirates versus Andromeda. I think it's gonna be really interesting. I think the Valorant Pirates' strengths are probably located similar to what our strengths were, and we fared really terribly into Andromeda. But I think also the cat is kind of out of the bag with the Andromeda team, so that could spice it up a little bit. But I'm going to predict a 2-0 Andromeda. So I'm going to say 2-1
Fuck.
Spectres, 2-0 Rift Sharks, 2-0 Andromeda.
You just took my exact prediction. No.
You
That's
think my
crazy.
team is going to 2-0? I love your faith in us.
Okay, well, I am dead ass having the exact same one. I think it's Spectres 2-1. I think Spectres did show like they showed their hand a little bit in like the Rex Flex, but like they're still like unknowns in like how Ann will play the game. But I think that could be used to their advantage, like different champion pool, stronger ADC bot side. It's just like it's not exactly a downside, it's just a difference in play style. So I think it could throw them off guard. There is also I think that's it actually. But there's also Andromeda versus Mass Pirates. Are not sorry, I'm skipping around. Rift Sharks versus Metabusters. I will say I am curious to see how the Metabusters adapt. I will say I think it still is a 2-0 for Rift Sharks. I think their players are really strong, but they just had a few like synergy kinks to iron out and like a little bit of like a draft issue versus
Yep.
the Andromedas not knowing where things were going. So I do have a little more faith that they'll be able to pick it up. But I do believe in it. Okay. I know I doubted Andromedas early on in the season. I'm on the Andromedas hype
I
train. I'm
put them
riding it to
top
my fucking
three.
grave. I had them in fourth. I'm on the train, bro. I'm gonna say Andromeda's 2-0. I'm a huge believer in Cam Jungle. Another one of my proteges, I guess, TM. Joke TM. But it's like I think he performed super well. I think the synergy between him and Dave was like super underrated. So I'm super hyped for that. This should be a really fun season. I'm super glad I've swapped to casting. I want to watch all of these games.
And I think, to quote my team regarding Andromeda, the dick riding is real. And I think that's the big takeaway for this entire week. You win the game by just simply camping mid lane and then snowballing your entire game. And you just draft a tank top. So even if you lose top lane, it doesn't fucking matter because Ornn's still going to do the same thing. Shen's going to still do the same thing. Mordekaiser, Alawi, pick all these champions. If you're able to just hype up your mid laner and get that mid jungle duo ahead, you will be able to simply win the game. And I think we've actually had some insane bot lane performances here, and I don't mean to discount them. But I just think the mid jungle duo is the strongest in the game at the moment. So if you're able to play through that successfully,
Yeah.
I think you'll find a lot of success. All right. Do you have any closing thoughts? We got 20 seconds.
Nah, I think we're good. This was a good episode to wrap it up on.
Okay,
Or a
Mason,
good
you
spot
didn't
to wrap
move
it up
around enough this time, so just dance for 20 seconds.
on. No, I'm good. I'm good. We're ready.
Well, I'm not seeing
We're here.
enough movement. I'm not seeing enough
No.
movement.
It's fine. It's fine. I moved a lot while we were talking. Don't worry. Trust.
Surely. Sorry, I had to quote my boy Ninja, you know.
True.
All right.
That's crazy, dude.
And with that, we're logging off. See you next week.